Okay, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about trying to get animals established outside the reserve, because whilst we have this great project inside, the big aim of Arid Recovery is to try and get animals beyond the fence. And the main issue with getting animals beyond the fence at Arid Recovery and in the arid zone is feral cats and foxes. There are two biggest problems. And we have actually tried to reintroduce bilbies and bettongs beyond the fence at Arid Recovery multiple times. And I think the most we got them to stick was 18 months for bilbies and about 6 months for bettongs. And in every case, they would be eaten by feral cats in particular. Foxes we could control with aerial baiting, but cats were much harder to control. And we're not the only ones that are having this issue. This is a really widespread issue in semi-arid and arid rewilding history in Australia. And the vast majority of these projects failed due to cat and fox predation. And this is a bit of an upsetting picture, but if you're an ecologist, this is what you come across when you're trying to rewild animals outside of fenced reserves. It's very upsetting when you come across cat kills, and it's something that we've been working on for 25 years to try and reduce this and actually get animals living outside of fences. So apart from exclusion fencing, we have tried a lot of other different types of methods of getting animals established beyond the fence, and I just wanted to talk about a couple of these today. The first one was aerial baiting trials for cats. This is an Eradicat pink sausage bait that was made in Western Australia with secret herbs and spices, particularly supposed to target cats. And way back in 2002, we were the first place outside of Western Australia to trial these baits, and we did an aerial baiting program for several years outside our recovery. That pink area is the area that we baited, a 20 square kilometre radius around the reserve, and those little dots are feral cat and foxes that we radio tracked. Unfortunately, it didn't really work. It worked 1 year out of 4, but we had reinvasion within 3 days. We had a lot of poor bait uptake, mainly because of this culprit here, the rabbit. So cats much prefer to eat rabbits than they do baits, and we have a lot of rabbits at Roxby Downs. You can see here there's a Eradicat bait at the front there, and you can see one of the cats just walked past, didn't even see it. One of the cats sniffed it and walked off, and then it gets taken by a non-target animal. So this was pretty much what we were seeing happen with cat baiting. So another trial that we did was with the Felix the grooming trap. So as Nathan said previously, this was invented by John Reed. It's a device that squirts the poison onto the cat's fur. So it relies on compulsive grooming instead of cat's hunger. So this was invented so that the lasers would detect a cat, squirt the poison gel, and the cat would lick it off and die. And we were one of the first places, in fact we were the first field trial of Felix's in Australia. We set them along roadways, and we were able to show that we could reduce the cat population by 2/3 in 6 weeks using these devices. So that was great. The main issue with them is that they're very expensive, so you can't afford enough of them to populate the entire area around Roxby. And the third thing we looked at was addressing the naivety of the animals themselves. So these native species haven't co-evolved with cats and foxes. They don't recognise them as predators. They don't have appropriate responses. So as well as trying to control the cats themselves, we thought, well, how can we actually improve the responses of these prey? And we came up with an idea called in situ predator training. And this is where we put bilbies and bettongs in a paddock with feral cats, which was completely opposite to what we've been doing for the last 15 years, which was removing cats from the reserve. We actually put cats into one of the paddocks in our reserve. And the idea was that we would stimulate and accelerate natural selection and learning and improve these responses of these threatened species so that eventually they could deal with these animals out in the wild. And we did find really significant changes after cat exposure. Within only a few years, we found they were warier, they were harder to approach, and they had physical changes as well. They actually got larger. So we found selection for larger body size, so it meant the smaller bettongs were preferentially being eaten by the cats, and we found heritability of body size as well. So our population was getting larger, and the larger animals were surviving because the cats couldn't take them. And behaviourally, they were also getting harder to approach. We also found that they escaped quicker and that they also were quieter. So I'm not sure whether this is going to work, but I'll see. This is a bettong alarm call. Sounds very familiar to some people. So what we found was that the bettongs in with the cats actually were very much quieter and didn't alarm call anywhere near as much as the others. So they were learning to be cryptic, they were learning to be quieter. They were also more reactive when they were escaping. So we definitely saw these amazing differences. When we looked at the bilbies, we actually released 20 bilbies that had been exposed to cats and 20s that hadn't, and we had higher survival in the bilbies as well. So results suggested to us that prior exposure to feral cats can change these traits. We're now looking at whether we can use quolls to do this, which is a native predator, rather than using an introduced predator, because that would be more ethical and more desirable. And beyond the fence, the next thing we're looking at is more robust species like quolls and koaris. And we already do have quolls surviving outside the fence for certain time periods. So I'll leave it there.